Hello everyone, welcome to the second video on the collection framework, and in this opportunity we're going to be talking about the first type of collections, which are sets. So a set is going to be a collection that does not have any duplicate entries. If we think from a mathematical definition of set, it's a group of elements that there are no duplicates. So exactly the same thing is going to be applying for a set in Java or in computer sciences in general. So each programming language has different ways of implementing sets, and there are a couple of implementation of sets in Java. Some of them are, for example, the hash set, the link hash set, and the tree set. Now, they are already written, and you can use them, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing in a second. Something that you need to keep in mind is that it contains methods from the collection interface, and it just has the added restrictions that no element can be duplicated in the set. So if I try to add an element twice, the set won't allow it. So let's take a look at that from a practical point of view and how we can use this in Java. So I just have a brand new project in Eclipse called Collections, and I just have a main class in there. I'm just going to add a main method. So once I have the main method in there, then I can start using a set. So just to use a set is just as easy as saying set. For example, my set is equals to a new, and I'm going to use one of the implementations, which is the hash set. Now, there is a couple of particularities here that we need to keep in mind. First of all, when I'm creating a set, I need to define, well, first of all, I'm missing the import in there, but I also need to define what type of set this is going to be. And the same thing happens for the hash set. So if I'm going to add if I'm going to create a new instance of the hash set class, I need to define what is the type of object that I'm going to store in there. So at this point, the set is empty. So I haven't added any element into this. Now I have defined a set of strings, but I could define a set of anything that I want. Boolean, person, any type of object, whatever I want, I can do. So because in this case, we have defined a string, so I'm just going to add strings to these sets. So my set dot add, so I can add, for example, Amilcar. And once I have done that, I should be able to print my set and see what I get. System.out.println my set, and let's see what we get. There it is. I can see that my set has only one element, which is Amilcar. Now, if I add a couple of other elements, well, they're going to be there. So let's say, for example, I add Graham, I add Mark, and I add Kathleen. So if I run that, there they are, Graham, Mark, Amilcar, and Kathleen. Now, something to keep in mind is that in the sets, the most important restriction is that I don't have any duplicates. So if I try to add anyone twice, so for example, I'm going to add them all for a second time, what is going to happen is that the second time the elements are not added because those elements are already there. So I can see here in my output that the elements haven't been added twice. As a matter of fact, if I try to print this method add returns a boolean whether the object was returned, inserted or not. So if I put that inside inside a system.out.println, I should be able to see whether the object has been added to the collection or not. So let's say here Graham again. Let's say here Mark and Kathleen. There you go. And now I'm just going to copy this. So I'm going to try to add them twice, but in each time I'm going to print the result, whether it is true or false. So when I run that, I can see that the first 4 times the elements were added, so they were true, but then the second times they're not added because they are already there. So it doesn't make sense to add something twice because that set has a restriction on that. Now, the other thing that is important to mention about the restriction, about the sets, is notice the order in which I'm adding the elements. I'm adding first Amilcar, then Graham, then Mark, then Kathleen. So, and that order doesn't correspond at all with the order that I'm seeing when I'm printing the object. Well, that is because in a set, the order of the elements is not relevant, and that's something important that you need to keep in mind. So the most important thing about the set itself is that there is no duplicate entries, but the order is not relevant at all. So it would be the digital equivalent of a potato sack. So if you throw potatoes into a sack, the order in which they're falling into the sack is not relevant. So that's exactly the same thing that's happening in here. It's just that it's not going to allow you to put the same potato twice into the sack. Brilliant. So this is the first. This is the first of the collection. So when would you use something like this? Well, you will use a set when you need to guarantee that there is no duplicate entries in your system. Now, you need to make sure that you understand your context. Without a context, it's very difficult. But the set of rules for a set would be no duplicate entries, order is not relevant. Brilliant. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.